Well, hello, and welcome to some Baldur's Gate 3 content. Now, today, my main objective is to help you understand a little bit about the companions that can be found in the early game and how that might impact starting up a game of your own. So what we're going to go ahead and do is I've completed the first area of the game and will continue to play through that in my own save file, but I want to create a secondary save for the sake of demonstrating some different items. So we're going to stick with the balanced setup. That's where I've been playing. That's what I'm familiar with. I don't know that there's a whole lot that changes about the storyline progression in any of the different modes. I think some of the fights get a little bit hairier or something else. We're going to go ahead and skip right past some of this cutscene stuff, mainly because it doesn't matter. I don't want to spoil a lot of the in-game stuff. We're not going to reset any of the tutorials or anything else, so you can experience and figure that out on your own. But the biggest thing here is going to be when it comes to picking your class. And I'm going to speed through the rest of the character creation because you don't need or really want to watch somebody else go through that, as there's a lot of details that can go into that. But the things that you should be aware of and the companions that you can get, and we'll go over where they're at and how to get them, is there's some options that will be given to you as optional companions. Primarily the ones that you need to be aware of is you have the option of a barbarian companion. You have the option of a cleric companion. You will eventually, through some questing, get access to a druid companion. You have access to a fighter companion, you have access to a rogue companion, you have access to a warlock companion, you have access to a wizard companion. So if that impacts your choices in what you're doing, by all means, factor that in. If you want to play something unique and different to one of those classes for the sake of not having duplicity, that's entirely up to you as well. But maybe you want to double down and have one of those classes. Just it gives you the option to make some educated choices and decisions on how you want to deal with things. For this, I'm going to actually play a sorcerer, just because I want to get a little bit more familiar with the mechanics of this particular class within the game, as I think that there's a lot of fun things that can be expounded upon with that. But I'll breeze through the character creation so you don't have to sit through the lengthy, drawn-out process that is that. Again, the customizability of this is phenomenal, and I want you to be able to experience that for yourself. So we'll pick up when we get to a point where it's pertinent as to how you can pick up these companions. Alright, so shortly after creating a character and wandering around, one of the first things or people that you're going to run into is going to be one of the first companions that you gain access to, but this is not the area where you permanently gain access to that companion. And you'll see up here, there is a what you'll later come to find out is a fighter who makes an appearance and presents themselves. This, of course, is Lae'zel. And Lae'zel is great for a lot of different reasons, but again, you're introduced to her here, and you get the opportunity to actually add her as a permanent party member later on down the road. So we'll fast forward past this until that becomes pertinent, as well as the first actual party member that you can add as a more permanent addition. So shortly after meeting Lae'zel, you're going to come into this particular room here. Now, there's a bunch of dazed persons around here that you can't interact with, but you can hear this screeching coming from this pod over here, this beckoning from this pod right here. And this is Shadowheart, and Shadowheart is your resident cleric. Now, Shadowheart, this is not where you permanently gain her as a companion, but depending on what you do here will determine where she's located once you do actually gain her as a companion or after the introduction here ends. If you want to, get some benefit from the environments and maybe figure out how to take care of what's going on, you can interact with some of the dialogue options and figures those out. But there is a console right over here on your right where you can free her now and have some additional assistance through the opening cutscene of the game. So we'll get to that in a moment as well. Eventually, once you've made it through the opening section, you'll wake up, for lack of a better term, or maybe exactly what you'd think, but not in the conventional sense, shipwrecked. And from here, this is where things really start to take off in terms of details and persons and the companions that you can find. So once you actually get through this section, the first companion that you're going to find, again, if you freed Shadowheart from her capsule, she's going to be right up the beach from you, just lying here on the ground. So upon making your way over to where she's at, you can rouse her. It'll give you an alternate option to like kind of check out the artifact that she retrieved from that pod, but you'll learn more about that later. So if you rouse her in this moment, you kind of get yourself in a situation where you're really beginning to build your party, and it's beneficial because not everyone gravitates to playing a cleric, and so the fact that you are given a cleric in your party right off the bat is immensely helpful. So we'll fast forward to the next little bit where you can find a companion. Shortly after meeting Shadowheart, you'll have an encounter with a couple of intellect devourers. It's not an overly difficult fight. They're fairly damaged from the crash and everything else. But once you get through this, you'll have the opportunity to level up members of your party, and then of course you can progress along as well. Now, if at any point you want to see kind of what's around in order to get in there, you can hold down the Alt key, or if you're playing on a controller, I don't know what button that would be, but there is something that you can do to kind of determine equipment that one can find. And apparently, there we go. You can get some nice things in here. Now, there's going to be two companions that you can find relatively quick here. There's going to be one up here on this path that you can't quite see yet, but there's going to be another that's on the back side of this little space within the ship. So if you progress up further, you'll eventually come across some things, and I'm just going to grab some loot off of some of these persons, just because it's always handy to have the things that they have, especially when they drop things like healing potions. Those are very nice to have early on. But up here, there's going to be a branching fork that you can take, and there's two different companions to find, so we'll go over both of those here real quick for you. The first is actually going to be up here. You've seen some of these arcane glyphs and sigils previously right here. These are fast travel points that you can interact with, and this one will become that, but initially it behaves a little bit different because you're meant to find something, or more specifically, someone. So if we interact with the rune,
approach the sigil on the stone,
you'll find that it swirls from it erratically. Doesn't behave the way that one normally would. And if you go to touch it, you get a little bit of a zap that doesn't actually hurt you or harm you or do anything. But you then hear a voice that comes from the inside of the space, and then an arm emerges. So if you give Gale a hand, actually, to assist with that, you can get some nice benefits, but apparently not this time because I can't quite get him out of there. So hopefully this doesn't hurt him or do anything. Or maybe it'll pull me in. I actually haven't failed this check before to really know. It does give you the option to pull again, and I'm going to grab some guidance on this, because having a cleric that can cast guidance is a real beneficial thing to have. And with that, we're able to exceed the threshold of the DC for this particular task.
Go on. Keep pulling.
And shortly thereafter, Gale will pop out of the portal. And this is where you've met a wizard to add to your party. Now, personally, I don't know that I'll continue to use Gale in this sample playthrough on account of the fact that I'm playing a sorcerer and having two of the main caster-style characters isn't necessarily a thing that you would want to rely too much on. But Gale can be very good. He's an evocation wizard. Some of these companions you don't get to pick their subclasses. So Gale is from the school of evocation, and Shadowheart is from the trickery domain. But some of the other companions that you'll come across, you actually do get to pick how they gain those subclasses and which subclasses they end up grabbing. So I'll blitz through the rest of this dialogue conversation. There's a lot of things to be discussed with any of these characters that you pick up. And we'll pick up with the other companion that you can acquire in this same immediate area. Actually, I would like to make an amendment. With Gale, you actually can pick the subclass here from the different schools of magic. Evocation is what it defaults to. You don't have to stick with that if you don't want to. But you do have the option to pick a subclass here. Some of them you don't get the luxury, but with a couple, you do. So the next companion that you can come across is on the opposite side of this nautiloid craft, and you can actually see the character right here. So if you come up to them, they will ask for some assistance. And this particular character is Astarion, and this is your rogue.
Brain things cornered.
So, of course, he's going to ask you for some help or some assistance. And if you, ask him to take care of things,
well, not to worry.
he's gonna, pull you down onto the ground, attempt to take you out. But you should be able to get away from him. It's not too terribly difficult, and I'm going to tack some guidance on just to make sure that I am able to get away from him. Looks like I would have been fine anyway, but hey, it's always nice to be safe rather than sorry. So, just like that, you're able to get away from your little rogue friend. And Astarion, he has some quirks, but he is very useful as being a rogue if that's not what you picked to play on your own. So, this is one of the other companions that you can have. There's a couple more, so again, we'll fast forward to that when it becomes pertinent. Now, just north of the Nautiloid crash site, you'll see up here, you're going to come across the next area where a companion is introduced. And with that, they're all going to be up here in this little clearing, or there's a commotion going on in this little clearing. This is not where you gain a companion, but you are introduced to one that you can gain access to. And that would be... well, you'll see through the cutscene here
Nobody gets in. Zevlor's orders.
That we've got a goblin horde that's falling down on this group. And eventually, as the goblins come in, you're going to have Wyll jump in to assist with that. And Wyll is a warlock that you'll have access to. So you see that there's a ward and some other goblins that come in here, and shortly thereafter, well, you'll see this. And just like that, we have Wyll, who jumps in. Mr. Warlock comes in and helps with the overall fight. And you can find him eventually, though his initial introduction here is a bit clustered. There's a lot going on here, but you should be able to route these guys out fairly easily. I'm not going to make you sit through the entirety of my fight or my combat here, just know that when we catch up, we should be able to find Gale where he is. And if you don't find him here, there is an opportunity for him to just show up later, and we'll talk about that as well. So once you've made your way inside the camp here, you'll find Wyll here training some recruits, training some persons for
Give me a best shot.
actual combat and such. So this is kind of a fun little cutscene that you get from him as he
Not bad.
attempts to
Again.
instruct the youngsters on how to conduct combat. And he's doing a pretty good job at it, all things considered.
I can't do
But
it.
after this, you should have an
not like
opportunity
you.
to recruit him, which is fine.
Umi, I don't need you to be like me.
So if you've recruited up to 4 persons in your party, you can then have excess
splendid plan.
participants
We'll talk more
go
then.
to your camp, and you can switch out your companions there at that time. So there's one more person that you can recruit into your party. And so what I'm actually going to do is I am going to go to the camp and make that swap to add Gale to the party, just because there's some benefits to having him around for the next little piece here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop Astarion from the party for a bit and just kind of let him hang out here. So I had to backtrack a little bit because I almost forgot about one other companion, and that was the one that we mentioned right at the very beginning, Lae'zel. Again, first character that you meet, and the location on the map where you can find her is, well, we'll get back to that right after we get through actually unlocking her. So, with this, you feel the different connection, you feel her talking to her, and then you'll want to, talk down the captors here in order to really ensure that you get her down. Got a nat 20 there, which is always nice. And then we can dismiss these and send them over that way.
Shook our camp good, so we came for a look.
And then we'll, let them go on from there. Once you have a chance to release her from this, there's another good option to add to your team.
Never.
And it's really kind of funny, the different interactions that you have. Anyway, the way that you need to get her down
You'll hear
is there's not a way to release the actual trap mechanism that's here. There's not a lever, there's not a rope or whatever else to cut, at least if there is. I haven't found it. So what you'll need to do is you'll need to break out the bottom portion of the cage. And Lae'zel will be freed to the point where you can recruit her to your team. So now that we've found Lae'zel, let's go ahead and jump back to the final companion that you can find as a part of this. So as you get to the north side, and I've skirted around some of the dangerous areas down here for my party at the time being, but as you get around the north side here, you're going to end up finding someone that's very directly connected to Wyll. And this is Karlach. This is the tiefling that he's hunting. But Karlach is a tiefling barbarian that you'll gain access to. And they've got a history, but you can dissipate the disagreement that they're having in order to recruit her over to your team. Now, if you haven't recruited Wyll by the time that you find Karlach, and you recruit Karlach, then Wyll will show up at your camp later that night as having tracked her down to find her. But if you play your cards right, you can make sure that you have access to adding her to her party as opposed to letting Wyll kill her. That may have some repercussions down the road, but repercussions are things that you kind of have to be expectant of every now and again. Once you've recruited Karlach into your camp, you can, track her down and have some conversations with her. It piques some interesting dialogues regarding Wyll, but what I am going to do is switch her into the group because, well, as you can see from the party dynamic, I am in desperate need of a tank, and like I said, Gale has some great qualities to him, but I don't need two arcane-style casters. Well, sorcerers aren't arcane as much as they are charismatic, but I don't need two of a similar casting type within the party. So we'll go ahead and get Karlach switched in. So just to review, this is where you can find Lae'zel. So the different locations, one more time in review, are right here is where you can find Shadowheart. She'll be in a couple of different spaces depending on whether or not you free her from her pod before she escapes, or before you escape the Nautiloid, or on the beach if you do. Up here is where you'll find Astarion. Over here in this roadside cliffs portal is where you'll find Gale. Here is Lae'zel. And then up here is where you find Wyll, and back here is where you find Karlach. That should be all of those, again, with the exception of the companion that is locked behind some questing, so we'll go over unlocking that individual and how to add them to your party at a later time. But I hope that this has been helpful. And if you have different points in this section of the game that you'd like some assistance or pointers with, please let me know. I'd love to be able to assist you so you can get the most out of your playthrough so you're not overlooking anything. But that's going to do it for me. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope that you have a fantastic rest of your day.